This is Enis Özer from RestartLab, and I hope you enjoyed today's session and we all have an amazing experience today. Before moving on to the session details, I just want to give you some brief information about our organization, RestartLab. RestartLab is a cross-industry think tank initiative, as we like to call it. And in RestartLab, we want to question the work concept as we know today. So we are exploring alternative organization models in RestartLab with our colleagues and more human-centric or working environments together. And also we are looking deep into the dark side of the traditional way of working, and we are challenging the status quo. And by doing this, we want to redefine the work concept. So we know there are organizations out there that consist of self-managing teams and that have achieved to be more human-centric and where employees are happy to work. So in RestartLab, we believe that sharing their experiences will also inspire us too. And for that reason, we have organized this second RestartLab event today to get inspiration from one of the most promising management model of the future, Hayer's Rendanheyi model. And I'm pleased to introduce you our guest for today, Emanuele Quintarelli. Welcome, Emanuele. Thank you for your contribution. It's good to see you here. How are you?
Thank you for having me. I'm very happy to be here. I'm doing well. I'm very much looking forward to, discuss a bit.
Okay. And Emanuele called himself as an explorer of more humane organizations in one of our mailings, and that I liked it. And he and his company, Boundaryless and Platform Design Toolkit, have extensive knowledge on Hayer model, Rendanheyi, and platform organizations. So today we'll talk about Rendanheyi model. Emanuele will have a presentation for about half an hour or 25 minutes and half an hour. And during his session, if you have questions to ask, please use Slido. That will share the Slido link in the chat section. And after the presentation, I'll be asking your questions to Emanuele, and we'll talk about the questions. And so now I'm leaving the word to Emanuele.
Thank you again. Yes, you said I'm for humane organizations, and I'm for humane organizations because I spent so many years in organizations that were not so humane. And today I would like to talk a bit about a very exciting new experience, more than the model that is coming from the East, but that is also influencing the new thinking in Europe and in the US. So let me share my presentation. I will talk about collapsing empires and thriving forests. And at the end, I hope you will understand why. Just a couple of words about myself. I've been working mostly with huge multinational organizations, and right now I'm part of Boundaryless. As the name tells, it's really about breaking silos and inspiring new thinking and new practices for future-looking organizational models that support also a new role of organization into the market, and a model based on platforms, on ecosystem, on multi-sided exchanges. So let me get started. First of all, what I'm going to discuss today, it's part of an ongoing conversation that started with Hayer. Today, the leader of white good appliances, many years ago, a few years ago, we started interacting with Hayer and with their very inspiring philosopher, CEO Jiang Rimin. We discussed it with a number of prominent figures in the company in the US and different parts of the world. And we had a number of classes. And I must say, we learned at least as much as participants into these master classes, because what we try to do is to reflect with them about the implications of higher experience in other parts of the world. And we do that also with other thinkers, such as Michele Zanini, such as Doug Kirkpatrick for Morningstar, Javi Salcedo Bilbao from K2K, because we believe that many of the concepts that we are going to discuss today are not unique to hire. Actually, have been happening with different names along the last 40 years of organizational design. I will try to reinforce this point quite a bit. So you are invited to participate to this conversation. Most of it is public and it's free. The starting point for me today is not organizational design. It's about the market. As I was saying before, Boundaryless has been working on designing platforms for many years. And our contact with Hire and the Rendanheyi, this new model, really comes because of that, because of our experience in platforms. And why is that? Until a few years ago, basically none of the biggest, the most capitalized companies in the world were platforms. But today, 7 out of the 10 biggest companies are platforms, are based on ecosystems. Just think about Amazon, just think about Apple, about Google, about Uber, about Airbnb. And the thing is that if you are a platform, your goal is not so much about efficiency, not so much about trying to control the market. It's about inspiring new dynamics in the market and inspiring scalable learning. And unfortunately, the traditional organization design, and with that I mean the top-down hierarchy, the command and control, is really not created to maximize this curiosity, this sensing the market, this taking inspiration and reacting as quickly as possible and co-creating with the market. So the thing is that, as Martin Reeves here says, is from BCG, is that we may think that ecosystems are something that is beyond the company boundary, but it's not really true, because you cannot have a two-sided marketplace, so an ecosystem, unless we change also the inside of the firm. And why is that? There is this guy is called Conway, Matt Conway, that in 1967 came out with this idea. He was a programmer. And he said that any organization that designs a system, you can think about software, but you can also think about any other engagement mechanisms like a platform. Any organization that designs a system will produce a design whose structure is a copy of the organization communication structure. What does it mean is that when you do software, software is composed by modules. And modules has APIs, so interfaces between them. The thing is that even the teams working on those modules have interfaces. So the way in which we design the software depends on the relationships between those teams. Just think about websites. It happens very often that websites in the public administration have the same information architecture, the same structure of the content that the organization has inside, even if citizens don't know anything and don't care anything about how the organization is structured. If you think about Spotify with all of their agile thinking, it's possible only because the product is based on microservices. So at the end, the squads, the tribes, the guilds are possible only because the product itself, what the company designs, is really modular, structured in that way. So the lesson from Mel Conway is that what you are inside is the same that you are going to provide to the market. The second lesson comes from another law, the law of Roche Ashby, that was the father of cybernetics. He said that if you want to control a system, so if a system is to be stable, the number of states of its control mechanism must be greater than or equal to the number of states in the system being controlled. Or the short version, only variety destroys variety. Variety means information, means richness, means complexity with terms that we could use today. And what he's saying is that if you want to really manage a system, you need to have all the information, you need to know all the states in which this system can be. Now, if your system is a platform, it's a multi-sided series of exchanges, basically you need as much variety inside as the variety, as the complexity, as the richness that you have in the platform. So taking these two together, what you design outside is what you are inside. If you want to enable a platform, and that's where the business and that's where the market is going, you have to be a platform inside. And Ayer is probably today the best example of bringing market-driven ideas inside the organization. But it's not the only example, and I will come to Ayer in a few moments. I just want to start with another example. Think about Apple and Amazon. They are both successful organizations, but they are very different. They have very different goals. Apple has the goal of, controlling the product, having a strong leadership, taking control of the entire experience of suppliers, of software makers, of the users. And it's organized as a traditional organization with a vertical chain of command and one profit and loss. It's perfectly fine, but it's very monolithic. On the other side, Amazon is very different. It's based on a number of different products. It has different units with a distinct profit and loss. The goal is not so much to maintain a monolithic coherence, but to optimize for different products and, if you want, for different markets. And they do that using interfaces. They do that by infusing money through capital allocation, but leaving complete freedom to the single pieces of the business. Both successful, but very different. What Ayer is pointing to is that if you want to have more variety, more diversity, you need to be more divisional. You need to have loosely coupled pieces more than a monolithic, unique component. But again, Ayer or Amazon are not the only example. In any industries, this is happening. Another example that you know probably about is Buurtzorg. This is no profit. It's a neighborhood care in the Netherlands. And it's a company created by a nurse, Just a Block, that was tired of having to fight bureaucracy. And he came out with an organization that now has 14,000 nurses in 1,000 autonomous self-managed teams. So there are no managers. Each team is responsible for hiring other nurses, training them, finding patients, treating them, and managing every other aspect with no centralized structure. So there are no managers, no planning, no marketing. Many self-managed teams and only a minimum level of bureaucracy. And the value that they save by not having this overhead is shared back with nurses. I will mention a number of examples of this kind, but as you see, this idea of spreading the organization, fragmenting the organization in many pieces is starting to become common. But what Jeff Bezos said as well is that, you want to fragment the organization, but you also need ways to rebundle, to reconnect, to maintain the communication between the pieces. And in this memo that Steve Yeggis sent many years ago, he said, basically, you can do whatever you want. You will have your small team, a team that can be fed by 2 pizzas only, but you need to use interfaces to communicate. And there is no other communication beyond that happening through interfaces. If you're not going to do that, you're going to be fired. So in a sense, the software becomes the organization, and the organization becomes fragmented, but with very clear and standardized mechanisms for the pieces to talk to each other, not just internally, and that's another interesting point, but also externally. So the interface is also the way to interact with components or with teams or with organizations that are beyond your own organization. Where is the trick? And that's another example. Morningstar is the leader in tomato processing. Instead of having small units that are teams, they have individuals. They have hundreds of people collaborating with each other through what they call colleague letter of understanding. Basically, it's a contract, it's a memo they use to negotiate with each other about what every individual is going to provide and is going to receive. So these contracts that do the rebundling, the coherence of the firm are encoded in a software. Basically a big piece of software that is very fluid, in which you can tell who is working with whom. And this is an important point, because in all of these examples, if you want to fragment the firms in many pieces, you need software, especially software as a service, to guarantee the communication between the pieces in a standardized way. This is happening, of course, also in Amazon, for example, in Zappos. Now, the message for you is that this journey towards new organizational models, it's happening in hundreds of firms. It's happening at any scale, small companies, just Valve, but also huge companies, just higher, the goal and the topic for today. And it's happening also in highly regulated markets, in markets in which there is lots of risk, national security, banking, food processing. So this is really where I believe the market is going, by replacing the hierarchy, replacing the static structure with something that is much more dynamic. And to close this first part with the words of Dave Snowden, one of the biggest names right now about complexity, what we are seeing is really the future of the organization. There is not really about the organization, it's about a new way of organizing, whether that's a market or it's a firm. What we are looking for is a set of unique solutions that emerge from the organization itself, that adapt, so they change based on the needs, and they still guarantee fragmentation, but also coherence. This is the biggest problem of organizing at scale that we have today. And this is also the problem that Ayer and the Rendanheyi model are trying through very innovative solutions. Rendanheyi means basically reducing the distance between employees and customers to zero, exposing every individual to the market, trying to generate a great customer experience, but at the same time unleashing the talent and the ingenuity and the energy of the entire workforce. And the astonishing thing, as we will see, is that this is not a new model. They have been working on this for nearly 40 years. As Boundaryless, what we are trying to do is to take this model that has been created in China and compare it and integrate it with other examples coming from decades of organizational design to see how to take inspiration and how to apply it also beyond China and US and Europe and in other country, also in Asia. So the story starts in 1982. In 1982, this guy that was called Jiang Guimin was a manager in a company on the brink of bankruptcy. They had these products, these fridges that were not working. 20 of them were defective. And just think about the cost of fridges in China at that point. A single fridge cost something like a year of salary. And still, he invited all the workers into the hall, gave them some some hammers and asked them to smash the fridges because the fridges were not working. And just remember that in China, at that point, it was perfectly fine to sell products that were not working because people were still buying them and repair them and resell them or use them. But still, he wanted to give a message, the message that the customer experience and the quality of the product was really important. That was 1982. In 1986, Ayer, or the company, so the household appliances division, became profitable again. In 1992, Ayer Group was born and Zhang Ruimin became CEO. Starting from that point, Zhang Ruimin guided Ayer through 5 different organizational and business transformations, from command and control, where most of the market still is, to matrix organization, to creating independent BUs, to inverting the pyramid, so giving power to the customer and giving power to the people facing the customer, not to the managers, up to the existing model. There is the entrepreneurial ecosystem that we are going to discuss today. So he reinvented business models, he reinvented strategy, but he also reinvented the entire culture of the organization. Just to give you an example, when he inverted the pyramid, more than 10,000 managers had to find themselves, let's say, a new role in the organization or a new job outside for the organization, just to understand how massive the transformation was. This is how Ayer looks today. Probably it's quite different from your typical organizational chart. And very briefly, there are 3 main concepts. The first concept is what we have seen already, the micro enterprise, a small team that is autonomous, that have plenty of freedom in the organization. The second concept is the ecosystem micro community. There is not a unit, it's not a structure, it's a dynamic contract between the micro enterprises. It's about letting them collaborate. And the third concept is the platforms. The platforms are what remains of corporate functions. So let me go into the detail of basically each one of them. If we had to summarize, there are only 4 principles in the Rendanheyi. The first principle is we are going beyond the monolithic functional design and we are going to fragment the organization in micro enterprises that need to be coordinated. The second principle is that the salary of every individual is not paid by Ayer, it's paid by the customer. And the look, it's an outside-in perspective in which value is defined. So what matters is really the value that your product and your services generate for the customer and the amount of money that the customer is going to pay for it, not what you believe or what Ayer believes. The third point is that instead of having a top-down strategy, top-down goals and priorities, what Ayer is doing is investing money in a few user-driven scenarios. One of them is the Internet of Food. They believe Internet of Food is big, they're putting money on it, and the micro enterprises and the EMC can decide to take that money and to build products and services through that money. But there is no, push from the top to do something. It's your choice. The last point is about culture. It's about thinking that organizational design is always in evolution, and you have to thrive on that. You have to accept that. You have to be part of that. So to give you just a bit more details, the micro enterprises have their own profit and loss. Their goal is to get rid of cultural and technical debt. So to go on the market, sense new opportunities and launch new services and products. And they have 3 rights. The first right is they can make any decision they want. The second right is they can hire anybody they want. And the third right is they can distribute money, compensation, how they want to the people. So in a sense, they are small companies. And some of these micro enterprises are even external micro enterprise. So they are not necessarily employees, and sometimes they are not really part of Ayer. First concept, The second concept is this idea of bringing a customer view within the organization. So what they want to do is to inspire the micro enterprise to see opportunities, customer opportunities, not because some manager is telling you, but because you as an entrepreneur see those opportunities and want to build value on top of that. This is technically very important because employees only have a universal basic income that is very small. It's good for survival, but if they want to have a good salary, they have to build or they have to join micro enterprises. So you're free, but if you want to have a good salary, you must do that. The EMC is the dynamic construct that has been introduced only in 2019, so after 35 years, to facilitate not just competition between the micro enterprises, but also collaboration, harmonization of work between loosely coupled micro enterprises. Again, the ecosystem micro community looks at the user, looks at the experience of the users, and tries to orchestrate the different micro enterprises that bid to participate and that establish a contract in which they say what they're going to give and what they're going to get to enable a user experience. And the last construct is really this idea of the industry platform and the shared services platform. Basically, HR, IT, also them have been unbundled in small teams that need to provide services to their peers. Every micro enterprise can choose if to buy the service internally or if to buy those services in the market. So unless you generate value, your colleagues are going to pick somebody else and you are going to need to find yourself another job. And the investments, as I said, the industry platforms, it's coming from the firm that is inviting you to become an entrepreneur. So to put skin in the game and to really create new opportunities. Right now, Hire has 4,000 micro enterprises, 300 of them are customer facing, and 3,700 provide services to the others. So there is lots of complexity, and these numbers are varying a lot. The last point is about culture. And I won't stress this a lot, but it's clear that this culture, this environment is not a good fit for everybody. Not everybody wants to be an entrepreneur. Not everybody wants to be pressured to exceed the market performance, because this is what Hire expects from you. They have this concept of leading targets. You have to do better than the market. If you do better than the market, you're going to bring home lots of value, also lots of money, but the level of expectation is very high. So going in the closing of my presentation, why all of this is happening? The first point is that Hire demonstrated that this idea of bringing the market, bring fluidity within the enterprise is generating returns. They became the leader in white good appliances. They have been growing last year. They have been growing 61% in Germany and 52% in Italy. And they even acquired General Electric appliances in the US and Candy in Europe. So at the end, they are bringing this idea in other markets, and they are introducing these ideas in other cultures. And there are 62,000 companies in the world studying them. All of this is creating a better business performance, better innovation, better employee engagement, and better sustainability. So at the end, it's really a new paradigm that is bringing results. That's the first point. The second point, as I said, is this is not about Hire. This idea that we are introducing as the entrepreneurial ecosystem enabling organization, an abstraction of what Hire is doing, it's happening everywhere. The fragmenting of the firm in many teams is happening in Valve, is happening in Whole Foods Market, it is happening in Handelsbanken and Kyocera. Kyocera did this in 1959. Handelsbanken has been beating the market average for 47 years in a row. So this is not new. It's massively powerful. The second level is that you want to share some of this value with the rest of the market or with the rest of the firm. At the end, if you think about what W.L. Gore is doing, is using reputation to pull teams to work together. Morningstar is using a colleague letter of understanding. So you need a mechanism, not just to unbundle the firm, but also to rebundle the firm. Amazon and Zappos are doing this. And finally, the enabling is the amount of common services, just technology, that you need to let people still communicate and be aligned when they have been unbundled. This is happening again in Morningstar, in Burzorg, but has been happening also in Semco. That is one of the oldest stories of the new ways of organizing. And finally, how to get started. We started to help clients, huge organizations, to do this, and we started to do this on ourselves. And we believe there are a number of questions, a number of polarities that we can address. I won't go through all of them, but you can see that the question is about who has ownership, who is taking the risk, how you see value, how you make decisions, how you engage external actors, how you integrate the teams, how you unbundle support strategy, and also how you can open information and strategy to the rest of the organization. So we are going very deep into the basic constructs of what we have believed for 100 years an organization was. And we are basically rewriting all of that. And finally, if you want to know more, we have plenty of content. This is free. So we have an entire toolkit. You can go on the site. There is the link. Download it and use it as much as you like. There are canvases. We are trying to really increase the level of awareness of what Rendanheyi, what Hire is doing, but also to help organizations and consultants and practitioners to apply these concepts within their firm or within their teams. And finally, if you really want to know more, we thought about a discount. We are basically providing a masterclass. We have been providing masterclasses for now a number of years, but we are going to have a new masterclass in April. And together with me, with Simone Cicero, the founder of Boundaryless, and Bill Fisher, that is one of the probably the biggest experts in the world about the work of Hire. You can join us, and you can do that with a bit of discount. So I hope this will convince you to consider this and to explore more. This is all from me. Today I try to be quick, but again, there is so much more. Please fire your questions. Let's have a conversation. And online you will find much more content in our posts, in our materials, if you want to go deeper. Thank you so much so far.
And thank you, Emanuele, for this inspiring sharing. And I want to add one more thing. I was one of the attendees of this Rendanheyi masterclass before. That's where we know each other. And it was a really helpful, and you get to understand how Hire and the Rendanheyi model works. This is really a helpful training, I can say. And thank you for the presentation also. Let me go over the questions, and we have plenty of questions here. And the first question from the audience is, do you think Rendanheyi is somehow a pure capitalist system? Does it cause constant pressure on the employees? We start with a hard question, I guess.
Yeah, you took the easiest question, right? So to be sincere, if you look at the interview with Zhang Ruimin and the number of interviews he had, there is lots of philosophical thinking. And if you take the title of my presentation, the thinking is, and this is more aligned with the Eastern and Western thinking, is that any empire, as robust and powerful it could be, eventually will collapse. So you can have all the structure, or the robustness you want, but eventually something that you cannot predict will destroy you. On the other side, a rainforest. So when you look not at the tree, but at the entire ecosystem, at the interconnections and the betweenness, may survive forever. This is the thinking. And it really comes from Taoism. It's come from Peter Drucker. At the end, you will find, looking into the Rendanheyi, a number of principles. They believe, I don't want to interpret it too much, but they believe this is a way to free up the organization. So to make the organization nimbler and to unlock the potential of people by transforming individuals, employees into CEOs. Of course, this introduces lots of pressure. And not, as I said, not every individual is fine. But they believe this is really in line with the market. In some sense, it's also about purpose. In Mandares, just to give you another example, we decided to integrate the Rendanheyi with sociocracy. Sociocracy comes from 140 and 50 years of Quaker thinking, bringing purpose at the center. So we wanted to stress the human part more than what Ayer is doing. But I wouldn't say that this is in opposition to what Ayer is doing. And just keep in mind, this is emerging. So what they say is that if you are talking about an Ayer model, you're wrong because there is no model. How they are applying it in Russia is different and what they are applying in US. So I would say, yes, there is thinking about purpose. It's not just a capitalistic thinking, but to our, let's say, European eyes, it may be look a bit harsh, a bit tough. And my invitation is not to copy Ayer, but to take inspiration and to tailor and to integrate, complement Ayer based on your unique culture and context. This is what we are helping organizations to, not to copy and paste, definitely.
Okay, thank you. And a question from me this time, not from the audience, but I'm curious about the competitive environment within this model. I mean, as I know, it's introduced a really competitive environment both for micro enterprises and for the individuals. You said no top-down defined salaries, and if you want to earn more, you have to get into a micro enterprise or you have to be an entrepreneur. What is it? What do you think about this competitive environment within Ayer model?
So the model is really thought for entrepreneurs. So at the end, a new enterprise is born when somebody comes up with an idea. He goes to Ayer and say, okay, I have this idea. Ayer says, okay, you have to invest on it and you have to attract external investment. And you are going to put your skin in the game, meaning that you're going to benefit from it, or maybe you're going to suffer from it in a sense. And it's going back to the rainforest. It's not really about the tree. It's about the forest. So yes, it's competitive. The micro enterprise can compete. So you can have two micro enterprises that compete for the same segment, for the same service, and potentially only the best one will survive. But through the EMCs and through the industry platforms, they also have coordination mechanism. So at the end, you are invited to join an EMC because you want to work with other micro enterprises. You want to build more value with them. And it's very transparent. So in a sense, it's competitive, but it's also very fair. There are no political games. You know what you are into, and you can decide if it's a good fit for you. But yes, you are going to be an entrepreneur, whether you are an owner or, technically speaking, an employee. That's what they believe. The market is really pushing organizations to become if they want to empower platforms. So at the end, they believe this is the direction in which the market is going, and you can guarantee some rights, but competition is a mechanism to realign value.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the next question. What should individuals commit for success of this model? What kind of values the individuals should have, I guess, as I understand this question.
Taking ownership. So taking ownership is really the point. Trying to be proactive and trying to also aggregate others. So building, invest on your reputation. Because of course, when you join a micro enterprise or you bid on a micro enterprise or you bid on an EMC, there is somebody that is going to accept you or not based on what you did previously. So reputation is very important. The value exchange is very important. And taking responsibility is very important. As it is important also being open. So they do lots of open innovation. They work a lot with startups. They work a lot with external parties. Because they recognize that there is no boundary. So at the end, you have to accept that this level of competition and collaboration at the same time are the basis of the organization. And again, to me, if you want the surprise, is that this is working also in the US and this is working also in Europe. It's no longer in Russia. It's no longer China only. So maybe there is a need of mitigating a bit some traits, but we cannot say it's not working or it's working only in China. We have to accept it for how weird it could look.
Yeah, that's linked to the next question. And someone asked, some of our audience, is there any company in Turkey which is working with this model currently? I guess it's a question for our RestartLab
Yes,
team.
please.
We don't have any idea, and we don't know any organization working with this model. But maybe, Emanuel, you know, there is a branch of Hire in Turkey. I know as you said, in Russia, in Europe, in GE Appliances, Hire model works. But do you know anything about the Hire branch in Turkey, how they operate? Do you have any idea?
So I don't, to be sincere, I don't remember. In our training, one of the interesting things is that you have people from something like 25, 30 countries. And let's go from Thailand to US to China to Italy, of course. I don't remember, but what we are seeing is that Hire is progressively introducing these concepts in all countries with some peculiarities. So Italy is not the same than Russia, but the principles are still the same. So I don't know about Turkey, but I expect them to still be on board with the principles already and to start introducing the practices. And for us as Boundaryless, the goal is really to help the market, not only our clients, to think about this and to take inspiration about some of these practices. I think this is the important aspect, not learning everything about Hire. So not saying, yes, there is a company in Turkey doing exactly what Hire is doing. Most of my clients say, we are not Hire. We don't want to do what they did. But for example, we want to be entrepreneurial as they are. So what is going to take? Okay, let's discuss. Let's go through the journey together.
Okay. Thank you for the answer. Moving on to the next question. How do you establish strategical alignment in a decentralized organization?
Mm-hmm. Hire as an answer. There is not, it's not alignment as we mean it, probably meaning I'm the boss, this is how I see it, are we aligned? That's not what Hire does. What Hire does is, okay, this year we are going to invest on a number of platforms. We are going to put money on the table because we believe strategically that this is where the market is going and where Hire is going to go. So in a sense, it's a pull, it's not a push mechanism. It's up to the individual, the micro enterprise and the EMC to decide if taking that money and creating services to fulfill the mission of that industry platform. So it's a very distributed and, if you want, soft strategy. It's a pool strategy in which at the end you could do the opposite of what the strategy says. You're not going to get investment, but you could be very successful. Maybe at some point you will decide that Hire, where you grew, is no longer your right environment, that you can spin off the micro enterprise. So it's perfectly fine. At the end, Hire is really about empowering new ideas and new products, not just achieving massive coherence. In a sense, the environment is very redundant. You know, the goal is not efficiency. The goal is scalable learning.
Okay. Moving to the next question. How about the performance evaluation, wage increase, bonuses, etc., of people in this model? We have talked about this fairly within the micro enterprise level, but maybe we can give this answer in detail with what happens within the micro enterprise, how the wage increase or bonuses, etc., are
Yeah.
defined within the micro enterprises.
So the micro enterprise is a bit like a black box. So the micro enterprise owner, basically owners can decide, and every time the micro enterprise exceeds a leading target, it is going to get extra money or extra value that they can share with the team, or let's say leave in the hands of the owner. If the owner is not, if the micro enterprise is not achieving targets, the owner can change. So the micro enterprise can vote for another owner. And if the micro enterprise is not achieving a minimum level of targets, eventually it's going to be disbanded, and the team is going to be, let's say, brought back on the universal basic income and invited to join other micro enterprise. But there is lots of, as I said, lots of freedom in terms of how much people are paid and how money is going to be shared within the micro enterprise. For the rest, there is a value adjustment mechanism, so basically a contract in the AMC, for example, that regulates the exchanges between different micro enterprises. And this is written and it's encoded into the system, so it's public at the end.
Okay. This question comes to you directly, I guess. As boundaryless, when you say merge Rendanheyi with other models, do you stay in boundaries of Rendanheyi, or is it completely free of its origins?
So again, there are no boundaries, I guess, but not because we are called boundaryless, but because Ayer believes so, and we agree with them. Meaning that if you look at the interviews of Kevin Nolan, there was the CEO for the US part, says, yeah, in China, they say that they have MEs for Salesforce. We believe that another approach is going to work for us, and it's fine. And nobody told us, no, you need to do like we do in China. So there is plenty of space, and this is very fluid. What we do, I don't think it's really the opposite or in contrast. What we do is adding sociocracy basically to increase the conversation between the different micro enterprises. One of the main concepts from sociocracy is the consent-driven decision-making. There is not consensus, so agreement, and it's not autocratic, the boss decide. It's quickly getting input from all the team and getting to a good decision together. For us, this is a way to connect the leaders and the delegates of the different micro enterprises and to create a common governance system. So at the end, it's, if you want, it's a fractal evolution of what Ayer is doing in a much smaller and simpler environment, trying to reinforce some aspects. For example, the awareness about the value we generate for the system. For us, this value comes through Creative Commons. So we believe that most of the content we produce shouldn't be kept by the firm, but should be given to everybody. And we know about competitors and big consulting companies using it to make money. And that's fine because we believe into it. And this is how we want to increase the value for the market. So I don't think it's in opposition. I think it's just an integration, tailoring of what they are doing for our own needs. And this is happening also in Ayer.
Okay, thank you. There's not a one solution fits for all. So we have to, anyway, customize and modify the needed practices.
I think a point I didn't stress enough, what Ayer is doing is proposing a solution, a model of organization that answers the theory of complex adaptive systems. And that means that it's an adaptive organization. So there is no static model. The model, the governance, the structure is going to change every day. So not only there is no right model, but anything you will come up with will change based on the pressure you have the market, the request, the needs you have internally forever. This is the most important lesson. Having a structure that is able to conversate with the market and structurally change itself. Otherwise, whatever you come up with will be obsolete in a matter of weeks. This is what we are trying to do and what IR has been doing for 36 years.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I have one more question. While bureaucracy is a dominant character in Chinese civilization, what motivation is behind the change in the mindset of employees within the company?
Sorry, I missed the first word.
While bureaucracy is a dominant
Okay.
character in Chinese civilization, what motivation is behind the change in the mindset of employees within the company?
So you may have read a book. There is called Humanocracy. There is really fighting bureaucracy, and it's a book written by Gary Hamel, a name you probably know, and Michele Zanini. And we did one of our sessions with Michele. The point they make in the book is that Peter Drucker in 1988 said the number of managers is going to be reduced by 2/3, and the number of hierarchical levels is going to be cut by half within 20 years. He got it wrong. The number of managerial roles has been increasing 90%, and even during COVID, it increased, while all the other positions have been reduced. And this is a cost of $10 trillion globally. So bureaucracy is not a problem in China or something in China. It's something that a toll that the global economy is paying, not just in terms of money, but also in terms of employee engagement, the possibility for us to find meaning at work, to express ourselves. And what many of the examples that we have seen, such as Burzerg, want to do is really to destroy this bureaucracy and to bring back humanity. So to give power and autonomy to people. So I wouldn't say this is about China, in France, in Italy. We see the same. Organizations are too slow and too inhumane to really foster our potential. The reason for which they specifically did this change is that because they believe that this is the only scheme that could work in an Internet of Things market, in a platform-driven market, for the reasons I expressed at the beginning. But also because they believe that every employee should be is or around CEO. So at the end, that's what they believe, and that's how they have built the organization.
And we have plenty of more questions. And for the time box, I want to ask one last question, Emanuele. What about the outside organizations? How is it possible for them to take place in this higher platform? Third party out of the higher organization.
Just to simplify it a bit, there is not much difference in inside and outside. And again, just to give you an example, in our contracts, so we are working with IR. Our contracts with IR are exactly the same that I have described for them. So you sign a value adjustment mechanism in which you agree, okay, this year I'm going to do this, and this. We are going to achieve these leading targets. If we do that, this is going to happen. IR is going to do this and this and this. So at the end, it doesn't matter whether you are inside or outside. Of course, in terms of investments, it's not the same in terms of connection with them. But I must say they try to invite external micro enterprises and external startups to co-create value. And again, another example, I've been speaking at their Open Talk conference, the global conference, a few months back, and they had I don't know, thousands of people from other organizations, professors from the major business schools and many other companies trying to get ideas. You have seen more than 60,000 organizations and more than, I don't know, hundreds of Fortune 500 companies getting inspiration. So at the end, they really want to share this both at the business level and a conceptual level. So in a sense, they are very open, and most of the content is open. And also, what we are doing is trying to bring some of their learnings and practices to a public that doesn't speak Chinese, and the language is a bit of a barrier today. So we want to open it up.
So we are at the end of our time. So I want to thank you very much, Emmanuel, for this inspiring sharing and these informations. It's food for thought for us that another type of organization models are possible in the world. So thank you very much for the contribution.
Thank you so much for staying with us today, and really get in touch, connect, and feel free to send me your comments, your ideas, even if you disagree. I think we want to have an ongoing conversation. We really believe in this exchange, and we really believe in trying to build bridges, not to represent models, but to connect models. Thank you so much, and let's keep in touch.
Thank you.